There's a moment you might know all too well. It's that mundane scene at a work meeting, a get-together with friends, or even a seemingly calm family dinner, when suddenly something happens. A carelessly spoken word, a slightly aggressive tone, a joke that no one else seems to notice, and you feel it. You feel it with an intensity that seems disproportionate, that feels wrong, that feels like a flaw of yours. Your heart races a little. A wave of discomfort washes over your chest. You smile, respond normally, keep the conversation going, but inside, something has been marked. Something is hurting in a way you already know will stay with you until the early hours, when everyone else is asleep and you're wide awake replaying that moment, asking yourself why on earth something so small is still affecting you. And the worst part isn't the discomfort itself. The worst part is the judgment that follows right behind it, that inner voice telling you you're too weak, too sensitive, too dramatic, that other people don't react like this, that you need to toughen up, grow a thicker skin, learn to not care. You've spent your life trying to become less sensitive, haven't you? You've tried to convince yourself it was all in your head, that you should just stop feeling so much. But there's a possibility that almost no one has told you about, a possibility that a man who survived the most literal hell in human history discovered from his own depths. Perhaps your sensitivity isn't your weakness. Perhaps it is, paradoxically, the deepest source of your strength. And Viktor Frankl, an Austrian psychiatrist who went through 4 Nazi concentration camps and emerged with a philosophy capable of transforming suffering into meaning, has something absolutely extraordinary to say about this. To understand what Frankl discovered about sensitivity, we first need to enter the context that shaped his thinking, because his ideas weren't born in a comfortable Viennese office, although he did have one of those too. They were born in the most improbable and brutal place imaginable for any wisdom about the beauty of human existence to emerge. They were born in Auschwitz, in Dachau, in Kaufering, in Turkheim. They were born at the moment when everything that belonged to Frankl was taken from him. His manuscripts, his clothes, his glasses, his name, reduced to the number 119, 104. They were born on the fringes of raw survival, where human beings were systematically dehumanized, where cold and hunger and forced labor and arbitrary violence composed the texture of every single day. And it was precisely there, in that place where humanity was pushed to its absolute limit, that Frankl began to observe something that radically contradicted what the psychology of his time asserted about human beings. He observed that survival didn't solely depend on physical strength. It depended on something subtler, more internal, harder to quantify. It depended on the capacity to find, even in the most absolute horror, some point of meaning that justified continuing. And the prisoners who maintained this capacity were often precisely those who possessed a richer inner life, a more refined sensitivity, an ability to connect deeply with experiences and with other people. Frankl even described how, amidst the exhausting march to forced labor, he could mentally close his eyes and imagine the face of his wife Tilly with such vividness that he felt a kind of real presence of her beside him. He wrote in his most famous book, Man's Search for Meaning, that man's salvation lies in love and in love. It wasn't sentimentality, it was a clinical observation born from the most adverse environment possible. This understanding leads us to a fundamental distinction that Frankl introduced, and that completely changes how we view sensitivity. Psychology that preceded Frankl, especially the Freudian tradition, tended to interpret emotional intensity as a sign of structural weakness in personality, as something that needed to be tamed, rationalized, reduced. Freud, in his genius, mapped the unconscious forces that shape human behavior with depth, but his view of the human being was essentially deterministic. We are products of our impulses, of our childhood history, of our drives seeking satisfaction. The mission of psychotherapy, in this view, would be to bring these forces to consciousness so they could be controlled. Frankl deeply respected Freud, but he disagreed on something fundamental in this view. For him, reducing the human being to an organism seeking pleasure and fleeing pain was amputating what is most essentially human in existence. Frankl introduced the concept of the noetic dimension, derived from the Greek nous, meaning spirit or mind. This dimension is not the Freudian conscious, nor the Jungian unconscious. It is a specifically human layer of existence, where moral conscience, creative capacity, freedom of choice, and crucially, the search for meaning reside. It is in this noetic dimension that deep sensitivity resides. A sensitive person is not someone with a more fragile psychology. It is someone who has broader and richer access to this specifically human dimension of existence. And now I want to pause and really talk to you. I know that many of you watching this video have been told your whole lives that feeling a lot is a problem, that your sensitivity is an obstacle, that you should be more resilient, more armored, more like those who simply don't care. Tell me here in the comments, have you ever been called too sensitive in a way that sounded like criticism, as if it were a flaw you needed to fix? If so, simply write, "My sensitivity has always been seen as a weakness." You don't need to elaborate beyond that, because by writing that, you are naming something you've carried in silence for a long time, and by doing so you give words to what perhaps dozens of other people here also carry, but never had the courage to say. Your experience matters. You are not alone in this. There is an entire community of deeply sensitive people who have arrived at this video carrying exactly that weight, and the courage to name it in the comments creates a space of recognition and relief that most everyday conversations never offer. Let's create this space of honesty and existential courage here. Frankl identified something he called self-distancing, one of the most extraordinary and at the same time most underestimated capacities of human existence. Self-distancing is the ability to step back from yourself, to observe your own experience without being completely consumed by it, to perceive what's happening internally with a kind of inner witness who remains curious even in the face of pain. And here's the paradox few realize. This capacity for self-distancing is substantially more developed in highly sensitive people. The person who feels intensely and has spent years wondering why they feel this way has almost inevitably developed a refined ability to observe their own internal processes. They know how to name emotional nuances that less sensitive people don't even realize exist. They've developed a rich inner vocabulary, a map of the emotional world far beyond what most people have access to. This isn't weakness. It's a form of intelligence that contemporary culture, obsessed with efficiency, productivity, and invulnerability, simply hasn't learned to value properly. Frankl used to say that humans are the only beings capable of laughing at themselves, of observing themselves from the outside, of stepping back from their own situation. This capacity for humor and detachment, far from being frivolous, is a sign of deep psychological health and genuine inner freedom. There's a clinical case Frankl describes in his writings that powerfully illuminates this connection between sensitivity and strength. An elderly doctor sought out Frankl in a state of deep depression after his wife's death. He had lost his beloved wife 2 years prior and still felt unable to overcome that loss. Frankl, instead of trying to analyze the doctor's suffering or offer techniques to reduce his pain, asked a seemingly simple question. What would have happened if you had died first and your wife had had to survive you? The doctor fell silent for a moment and then said, "She would have suffered terribly. It would have been impossible for her." And Frankl replied, "You spared her that suffering, but the price you pay for it is that you yourself must now survive and mourn her." The doctor remained quiet, shook Frankl's hand and left. There was nothing more to say. His suffering had transformed into something that carried meaning. It was an expression of deep love. It was the price of an implicit choice of protection. That man's sensitivity, his capacity to love with such intensity that the loss devastated him, was both the cause of his suffering and proof of his capacity to love. To separate the two would be to amputate one from the other. It would be to want the depth of love without accepting the depth of loss. It would ultimately be to want to be less human. This insight about suffering as an expression of love and depth leads us to one of the most important concepts in all of Franklian logotherapy, the concept of meaning in suffering, which is the third path Frankl identified for finding meaning in existence. The other two paths are more intuitive. We find meaning through what we create, produce, accomplish, whether it's a work of art, a business built, research developed, a child raised with care. And we find meaning through what we love and experience, whether it's contemplating a sunset of absurd beauty, encountering a person who transforms us, reading a book that changes how we see the world. But the third path is the most challenging, and also, according to Frankl, the most specifically human. Finding meaning in the attitude we adopt in the face of suffering we cannot avoid. Frankl wasn't preaching masochism or passive resignation. He was saying something much subtler and much more powerful. When suffering is inevitable, when there's no way to escape it, when resisting is impossible and fleeing would be an illusion, humans still have one last freedom, the freedom to choose how to relate to that suffering. And that freedom, however small it may seem, is infinite in its importance because it is the last bastion of human dignity in the face of any external circumstance. The deeply sensitive person, paradoxically, has privileged access to this third path. Because they feel suffering in all its intensity, they don't have the option of emotional anesthesia that less sensitive people sometimes use as a defense mechanism. They are forced to face pain head-on, to inhabit it fully, to find some way to coexist with it without being destroyed. And this process, when navigated consciously, when accompanied by the question, "What is this suffering telling me? What is it asking of me? What can I learn or offer from it?" becomes one of the most profound schools of human development that exist. It's not about romanticizing suffering. It's about recognizing that the sensitivity that makes suffering more intense also makes the capacity to transform it into learning and growth substantially more developed. Frankl observed this repeatedly in his years of clinical practice after Auschwitz. Patients who had richer access to their inner lives, who felt more deeply, who engaged more fully with their emotional experiences, also had a superior capacity to find meaning in difficult situations when guided appropriately in that search. If what you're hearing is touching something genuine in you, if you're feeling that perhaps for the first time someone is talking about your sensitivity, not as a problem to be fixed, but as a capacity to be understood and developed, then I invite you to subscribe to this channel. Here, we explore the thought of Viktor Frankl, other humanist philosophers and psychologists, who offer real and substantial perspectives on the existential questions that deeply sensitive people face with particular intensity. The search for meaning, the relationship with suffering, the building of an authentic identity in a world that constantly pressures for superficial conformity. You don't have to walk this journey alone. This channel exists precisely for those who have the courage to take the big questions seriously, the questions that don't have easy answers, but that make all the difference in how we live each day. Click the subscribe button and become part of this community of people who have chosen depth over superficiality, genuine self-knowledge over ready-made answers. Frankl developed over his clinical practice a therapeutic technique that is of remarkable philosophical elegance and has direct implications for highly sensitive people. Paradoxical intention. The technique works in a counterintuitive way. Instead of trying to suppress or avoid what causes fear or anxiety, the patient is guided to intentionally desire or exaggerate what they fear. A patient with a phobia of sweating in social situations, for example, would be instructed by Frankl to try to sweat as much as possible in the next social situation, to make it a deliberate goal. What invariably happened was that the attempt to intentionally produce the symptom made it impossible to produce involuntarily, because the anticipatory anxiety that fueled the symptom was broken by the humor and self-awareness the exercise required. The underlying mechanism is profound. By intentionally desiring what they feared, the patient activated their capacity for self-distancing, placing themselves as an observer of their own experience rather than being swept away by it. And in this space of distance emerged both the humor and the inner freedom that Frankl saw as signs of genuine psychological health. For sensitive people, who often develop anticipatory anxiety about their own emotional reactions, who fear feeling too much in situations where feeling too much would be inappropriate, paradoxical intention offers an extraordinarily useful tool. Instead of trying not to cry, trying not to be affected, trying not to feel what they will inevitably feel, the person is guided to intentionally embrace that sensitivity, to present themselves for the experience completely open to feeling whatever comes. And in this paradoxical openness, the anxiety about one's own reaction dissolves, because there is nothing left to fear. The sensitivity has been accepted as part of one's identity, not as a flaw to be hidden. The other technique Frankl developed is equally revealing, de réflexion, which can be understood as the art of redirecting attention from oneself to the world. Frankl observed that many of his patients suffered not from the intensity of their emotions in themselves, but from the hyperintensity of self-consciousness that accompanied those emotions. They were so focused on observing and analyzing their own internal states, so preoccupied with what they were feeling and why they were feeling it and what it meant, that they lost the capacity to genuinely engage with the external world. It was like trying to appreciate a sunset while obsessively analyzing the functioning of one's own eyes. Dereflection guides the patient to turn towards the world, towards people, towards causes, towards projects that call them beyond themselves. And here Frankl touched on something he considered central to psychological health: self-transcendence, the specifically human capacity to go beyond oneself, to dedicate oneself to something or someone that transcends one's own interests and internal states. For the sensitive person, who often gets lost in the intensity of their own inner life, dereflection doesn't mean abandoning that inner richness. It means channeling it into engagement with the world. It means transforming sensitivity into active empathy, into genuine care, into real presence for the people around. The person who feels deeply, when they learn to redirect that sensitivity outward from themselves, has a capacity for human connection that is absolutely rare and absolutely precious. It's impossible to talk about sensitivity and strength in Frankl's thought without directly addressing the concept that became the heart of all logotherapy: existential emptiness and its relationship to the search for meaning. Frankl coined the term existential emptiness to describe a state he saw growing alarmingly in the 20th century, and which he predicted would become one of the great crises of the West: the feeling that life lacks a fundamental purpose that organizes and justifies existence. It is not clinical depression, though it can coexist with it. It is not situational sadness that passes when circumstances change. It is something deeper and more diffuse, a sense that even when everything is going well externally, something essential is missing, that pleasures are fleeting and successes are empty, that there is an unanswered question at the center of existence that no material acquisition and no social achievement can answer. Highly sensitive people tend to experience this existential emptiness with much greater intensity than average. And this happens precisely because their sensitivity prevents them from being satisfied with the superficial answers that our culture offers for this restlessness. While other people may numb existential emptiness with constant entertainment, with compulsive consumption, with social media that creates the illusion of connection without the real substance of genuine human encounter, the sensitive person perceives the falsity of these answers with a disturbing clarity. The emptiness remains even after the third binge-watched series, even after the purchase that promised pleasure, even after the validation on social media that lasted exactly 40 minutes before the feeling of inadequacy returned. This inability to be satisfied with the superficial, which can and often does seem like a curse, is in Frankl's view a sign of genuine depth. It is evidence that there is a dimension of existence that demands more, that asks for something real, that is not content with substitutes. Frankl's answer to existential emptiness is not a formula. It's not a step-by-step guide. It is something that requires a fundamental repositioning in relation to one's own existence, a change of perspective that he described as Copernican. Instead of asking life what it can offer me, asking what life is asking of me, what I am called to give, create, love, endure, or transform from exactly who I am and the specific situation I find myself in. Frankl was emphatic in saying that meaning cannot be given from the outside, cannot be prescribed or taught universally. It must be discovered by each person in the singularity of their own existence. But there is a direction in this discovery. Meaning always points beyond the self, is always found in the encounter with something or someone that transcends one's own immediate interests. And here, sensitivity reveals itself again as a resource. The person who feels deeply, who is affected by the suffering of others with genuine compassion, who is moved by beauty and goodness and injustice, has antennae naturally calibrated to pick up the calls that life makes at every moment. They perceive where they are needed. They feel when a presence can make a difference. They notice the detail that would escape a less attentive gaze, the sadness disguised in a joke a friend made, the burden someone carries and cannot name, the beauty in a situation that seems ordinary but holds within it a flicker of genuine meaning. There's a dimension to Frankl's experience in the concentration camps that's rarely mentioned, but absolutely central to understanding what he discovered about sensitivity, his capacity to find beauty even there. In Man's Search for Meaning, he describes in chilling detail moments when prisoners, exhausted after a day of forced labor, would call each other out of the barracks to contemplate the sunset over the snow-capped mountains at the edge of the camp. They'd silently witness a beauty that was almost insanely at odds with the horror they were immersed in. And Frankl observed that these moments weren't escapism. They were a form of resistance. They were an affirmation that something within each of them remained untouched by Nazism. The ability to be moved by beauty, to perceive something beyond the utilitarian and the immediate, to inhabit, however briefly, a dimension of existence that transcended the surrounding brutality. Aesthetic sensitivity, the capacity to be stirred by beauty, was an existential survival mechanism there. It was proof that the noetic dimension, the specifically human dimension, remained intact. And if that was true in Auschwitz, what does it tell us about sensitivity in our relatively more protected lives? That the ability to be touched by the beauty of a poem, a song, a genuine human connection, an unexpected act of kindness, isn't emotional fluff. It's the most reliable sign that we are still fully inhabiting our humanity. Frankl also had something important to say about the relationship between sensitivity and responsibility, another central pillar of his philosophy. He argued that human freedom is always responsible freedom. There's no point talking about freedom without simultaneously talking about the responsibility for how we use it. And here he saw in the sensitive person not just an expanded capacity for suffering and love, but an expanded responsibility to use that capacity in service of something beyond oneself. The sensitivity that allows a person to perceive another's suffering with clarity implicitly carries the responsibility to respond to that suffering in some way, with presence, with care, with the creation of something that offers solace or beauty or understanding to others who are also seeking these things. The greatest artists, thinkers, caregivers, and spiritual leaders in human history were invariably people of extraordinary sensitivity. Not because talent is guaranteed by sensitivity, but because sensitivity offers access to the dimensions of human experience that fuel genuine creation, genuine empathy, genuine insight. Dostoevsky, who explored human suffering with a depth that still haunts us, was someone who felt with an intensity that sometimes drove him to the brink of self-destruction. Van Gogh, who captured a dimension of light and color and emotion no one had seen before, paid with a life of intense suffering for that perceptual capacity. This isn't romanticizing the suffering of the sensitive. It's recognizing that there's another side to the same coin, rarely shown. The same openness that makes pain more intense also makes beauty more vivid, connection deeper, creation more authentic, compassion more real. Frankl's logotherapy doesn't offer sensitive people the promise that they'll stop feeling so intensely. That would be a false promise, and according to Frankl, a loss. What it offers is something different, and in a way, more valuable. A framework for transforming that intensity into something meaningful, into something that serves a purpose beyond one's own emotional experience. It offers the perspective that feeling deeply isn't a problem to be solved, but a capacity to be developed and oriented. It offers tools, like self-distancing and paradoxical intention, that allow one to maintain a curious observer's relationship with one's own sensitivity rather than being constantly swept away by it. And it offers, perhaps more importantly than any technique, a view of the human being that explicitly values inner depth, emotional richness, the capacity to be moved by the world, as specifically human traits that deserve cultivation, not suppression. If you've spent your life trying to be less sensitive, trying to toughen up, trying to become like those who seem not to care, Frankl has a radical message for you. The path isn't away from sensitivity. It's deeper into it, but with awareness, with purpose, with the ability to use that intensity as fuel for a life that is genuinely yours, genuinely meaningful, genuinely oriented by something beyond the pursuit of comfort and the avoidance of discomfort. There's one last dimension that needs naming here, and it concerns what happens when the sensitive person begins to understand their sensitivity, not as a curse, but as a calling. Frankl spoke often of the idea that each human being has a unique mission, a specific combination of gifts and circumstances and calls that no one else can answer in quite the same way. This mission isn't something discovered all at once in a dramatic epiphany. It's something revealed gradually through attention to what moves us, what angers us, what touches us, what awakens in us the feeling of being completely present and fully alive. And for the sensitive person, these signposts are more frequent and more vivid than for most. They have access to an inner compass that constantly points to what matters, to what is real, to what deserves attention and care and commitment. The challenge isn't finding this compass. It's already there, guiding every intense emotion, every disproportionate reaction that is actually perfectly proportional when seen in the light of what truly matters to that person. The challenge is learning to trust it, learning to see in one's own emotional reactions not signs of weakness, but precious information about who you are and what life is asking of you at this specific moment of your existence. When Viktor Frankl walked out of Auschwitz, he had lost almost everything. He had lost his wife, his parents, his brother, his manuscripts, years of his life taken by unconscionable brutality. But he walked out with something no concentration camp could destroy. The profound certainty that even in the most extreme circumstances, human beings retain an inner freedom that cannot be confiscated. The freedom to choose how to relate to what happens to them. The freedom to find meaning where others would see only absurdity. And this certainty, born from a suffering that few of us can even imagine, has something to say directly to you who have spent your lives trying to be less than you are. Your sensitivity is not your burden. It is your most unique gift. It's the sign that you inhabit your humanity more fully than those who never had to question if feeling so much is normal. It's proof that you have access to dimensions of human existence that most people spend their entire lives without ever truly touching. The work isn't to suppress it. The work is, as Frankl said, to find the meaning that justifies everything, including the intensity, including the pain, including the moments when waking up in the morning seems to demand more than you have to give. That meaning exists. It's waiting to be discovered. And the journey of discovering it is in itself the deepest meaning any sensitive person can pursue. If you've made it this far in this video, you know that this kind of conversation matters to you. You know that the issues we explore here aren't philosophical abstractions for you. They are the real texture of your daily experience. So, give this video a like so the YouTube algorithm can bring these ideas to other sensitive people who are still searching for words for what they feel. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, because every week we dive deeper into the thought of Frankl and other humanist philosophers who offer real perspectives for lives that demand real depth. And in the comments, in addition to the phrase I asked for earlier, also share a moment when your sensitivity revealed itself as strength, not weakness. A moment when feeling deeply allowed you to do something, understand something, connect with someone in a way that wouldn't have been possible otherwise. These stories are precious. They are the living evidence that Frankl was right, that there is meaning in all of it, including the intensity of being who you are.